Beekeeper here on this beautiful Saturday afternoon, November 4th, 2017. What are we going to do today? I just got home from work and I'm getting things set up to finally get around to putting this axle into the old '88 Suburban. If you follow me on my Facebook community page, it's just Your Beekeeper. I showed you about 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago probably, that I brought this home and it's been sitting here under a cover since then. But so you're already a little bit ahead of the game, but if you're watching the video now, this is what we're looking at. This is the stock housing that came out of this truck, but there's nothing left in this housing that is stock. When the rebuilder pulled it apart, he dropped this axle into a hot tank to clean it all out. He checked out the axles and gave me a call and said that the driver's side axle, which is this side here, was twisted, could not be reused. He didn't recommend it being reused. The passenger side axle had damaged splines. Apparently the old broken ring and pinion gear teeth that were bouncing around inside of there boogered up the gears, or the splines on the end of the shaft there. So he's like, yeah, I don't recommend using it. I'm like, that's fine. I'm already enough money into this thing. Let's add some more axles into it. So this is what we went with. And then for a limited slip diff, we went with the OEM GM G80, which is a governor style limited slip differential. Everybody's got an opinion on what works, what doesn't work, what their opinion is, but quite honestly, it's my butt in the seat, and this is my truck, and this is the way I'm going to do it. So there. I went with the G80 because I did. It's GM, it's good. It's going to fit for what I use this truck for. When I first got this truck in 1990, it's an '88 Chevy Suburban. I bought it in early '94. And since then, I've put 238,000 miles or 248,000 miles on it. Never had a problem with the stock open differential. And I took that thing off-roading. I used to tow my boats around with it. I've had a couple boats over the years. I towed different trailers. I've towed cars around with it. You know, we've had 8 people in that truck going crazy off-roading, doing stuff that I probably should never have had that truck into. But it held together and held together just fine. So this is an upgrade for me. This truck has been semi-retired for work like that. It's predominantly going to be a people hauler. It's going to spend about 60-65% on paved road. The remaining balance will be ranch trips where it's driving on groomed roads. They might get a small percentage of like off-roading, for example, but that's not really my planned use of this. It's to get people in and out of the ranch in all seasons, snow, mud, rain, and the G80 is going to be just fine. I don't have any oil in here right now, as evidenced by the tags that are all over this thing. Yeah. And I've had rigs before. I've had older Chevys before with G80s, and I've never had a problem with them. Never had a problem. But let's take a look at some of the parts that I have collected together for this. So before I get to the parts here, let's take a look at this Chevy. The square body Chevys of this body style, in my opinion, always look like they're sagging in the back if you don't take drastic measures to correct that. And I've had this on level ground, put a level on that pinch weld underneath the rockers. The body has been level, but it always looks like it's sagging because the quarter panel cut on the fender well is almost 2 inches lower than the cut on the front. And the front just needs more clearance, right? The wheel turns, the axle articulates, you don't want to have any rubbing. Well, in probably around 94, 95, it was shortly after I bought this truck, I went on a rough country site and I got a 2-inch lift, front and back, spring lift. So basically it's just an extra leaf that you added to the pack, and that's this black spring here is a rough country 2-inch suspension lift, and it did quite nicely lift this truck. And then because I'm silly, this leaf spring here, which you can see is a little bit long, but I pulled that out of a 3/4 ton Chevy spring pack and slipped it in here. Added a new center pin, and then because I knew I'd be doing a lot of heavy lifting or loading on this thing, I also added these Firestone airbags back in the mid-90s, and the system works fantastic. It works great. Over the course of time, you know, the springs start to settle, truck looks a little saggy again because I put a lot of weight in this thing, and I found out over time that I needed more and more air in these to kind of get that back kicked up look. The problem with that is when you're running 50 or 55 pounds in these bags and the truck is unloaded, it makes it pretty rough. It's pretty bouncy back there. So here's how I'm going to counteract that. Now that I got the axle out and I've got all this stuff I have to do to it, yeah, let me show you what I've got planned for that. So because, you know, nothing I do is normal or standard, having those 2 extra leaf springs in my spring pack, having that top plate for the airbags, I couldn't just go on the interweb and say, hey, I need a 2-inch lift kit for block kit for my truck, because then the U-bolts wouldn't fit. So I had to do some internet searching and some measuring and whatnot. I ended up going with Rough Country. Here's what I went with: 2-inch fabricated blocks by Rough Country, 6592, 35 bucks or something shipped, something like that. It's 1/4-inch steel, extremely, I mean, they're heavy. They've got some meat to them. Extremely strong, in my opinion. Quite possibly stronger, in my opinion, again, and I could be wrong, quite possibly stronger than cast aluminum or cast steel, being that this is just compressive strength. And 1/4-inch plate like this, 1/4-inch steel like this, nice looking welds. I think it's going to do just fine. And then I went, that was directly from Rough Country's website. Then I went and saw my buddies at Rock Auto, and I could buy these. I got new U-bolts now. U-bolts, I always replace U-bolts when you do an axle. It's cheap insurance. These are like $6 a piece, I think, something like that, $6 or $8 a piece, with nuts and lock washer and washers. 9/16 of an inch here, 3-inch outer diameter on the tube, 10.5 inches long is what we went with. That's what I went with. I think it's correct. The old U-bolts were 8.5 inches, so I figure a 2-inch block, that'd be another 2-inch. Actually, no, the old ones are 8 inches, excuse me. So I went with this next size up, which is 10.5. So this should be plenty. I may have to trim the U-bolts just a little bit to fit that bracket, and I'll show you what I mean when I get a little closer to putting it together. We'll see, but I think we're in good shape. That's the diff cover. This is the gear oil that I'm using. Using a Stay Lube 8090 gear oil is what the rebuilder recommended. High point limited slip. This is good stuff right here. It's like 50 bucks for a gallon at Napa. It's crazy, but that's what he recommended. And he also recommended that I add the EquiTorque, which is a friction modifier for limited slip differentials, also made by Stay Lube. This is like 15 bucks. So yeah, I got a few bucks in gear oil. This treats a full gallon. That rear axle takes about 2 quarts, smudge less than 2 quarts. So I've got it out here sitting in the sun. I've had it out in the sun all day to loosen this up a little bit. I'm going to add this to this, and then we're going to put this in there. And then I'm also going to change the oil in the front axle and use the same gear oil. That's all. There's no reason for it not to work in there quite nicely. And I can't remember the last time I changed the oil in the front axle. And then when all's said and done, my buddy here, we're gonna get underneath this thing and just douse it in fluid film. Now, before I get the axle shoved under there, I'm going to use this undercoater to spray in between the leaf springs and soak it up real good while there's no tension on that spring pack. So yeah, let's start working. That's enough talking. Let's get going. See you guys in just a minute. course, I took a minute to do a quick detail. Got a little shine back in this paint. I just went down this side. I still have to hook the brakes up. I wanted it to sit on its own weight overnight and get everything to kind of compress. Spiderwebs. Yeah, I'm digging the way it sits, its profile. Once I get out and drive it a little bit, I'll let everything settle in place. That'd be pretty nice. Let's see if this thing starts. I just thought about that. It's been, I don't even know how many months. Still have the rusty spot on my floor mat. Good thing the floor mat was there. Where I put the chain. Oh, that's my air horn. Damn. And go. Alright, well, you know what? Good old interstate batteries. Ooh, sorry. God, it's been a while since I've heard that. Tomorrow we'll do the universals, drop the drive shaft in. I'm starting to lose daylight right now. We're going to give this a minute to run. We're losing a little bit of daylight, but I think I'm going to do the brakes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you betcha. Should be running in no time. See the difference. Put that quick detail, I put some quick wax on the quarter panel. I didn't put it on the doors. See the difference. Anyway, there it is. I don't know how much you're gonna see with the light. Woo! Woohoo, it's pretty. Oh, I'm so excited. Alright, let's keep on going. We'll give this a minute to run. We'll just keep on running. And here we are the next morning. It got late, it got dark, and I stopped picking up the camera. You get to some point in the project where you just want to get stuff done. It's getting cold. I did throw a quick detail on the paint because I want it to shine again. I didn't get any video of that because it was late in the day. Just used the detail wax on just the red part. This thing needs a bath. So where are we right now? As of right now, we have an installed axle. We have rebuilt brakes. Shoes, hardware, wheel cylinders are replaced. The drums are the same because they're in good shape. Everything's torqued down to specs. And what do I have left to do? Let's take a look. Maybe today, if I get home from work in time, I'll put a little time into here. I need to bleed the brakes. The hydraulic system is probably really full of air because I'm pretty sure these lines just pretty much drained down to nothing because they kept dripping. Anyhow, bleed the brakes. I need to press in new universal joints. I need to replace the grease seal on the back of the transfer case and put the drive shaft in. And then we're in good shape. I'll pull it onto a level surface and double check the fluid in the rear axle. I just kind of eyeballed it when I filled it on the jack stands. And then I would like to, as well, swing you around, change the fluid in the front axle because that did take a bit of abuse. Yeah, so that's it. That'll be another video. We'll get back to you on that. So that's where we sit. We had a good productive couple hours. I think I've got about 3 hours into it. Maybe a little more, 3.5 hours. And everything's looking mighty fine. That's how it sits without any air in the airbags. That's right, I gotta put a little air in there anyway. I don't want to run them at 0. Any hoozles, this video's probably been long enough. Alright, gotta go, gotta run.